Hey guys, welcome back to my sewing room. I'm Kelly and you found me here on Pick and Stitches. And today we're going to be working on this block here. This is from the Reflections quilt pattern that came in the Fat Quarter Shop Sew Sampler, and I cannot wait to show you all the things. Okay guys, so let's jump right on in here. Someone pointed out in the Fat Quarter Shop Sew Sampler Facebook group, that's a tongue twister, that there was an error in the picture on the front of the quilt. And so I didn't actually notice it until they said that. I hadn't even pulled the pattern out or started cutting anything. So thanks for the heads up there. I want to kind of show you how I like to lay this block out as I'm going. I definitely think design boards help a ton. They save me so many mistakes. But if you don't have a design board, like a piece of cardboard or somewhere that you can lay it out, I've even used like one of the portable ironing boards or like a felt mat, so you can have it, move it to one station, and then bring it back and keep it in the same order. It's just a bunch of half square triangles. So let's call a spade a spade. It's a really simple pattern, but it comes together really easily. And it's just all about the placement of the directions of all your half square triangles. And I think it's lovely. I've made a couple of these blocks already, and I am super pleased with how it's turning out. So let's hop on in and I'll show you what we did. So as we start off on this quilt, we're going to have quite a few pieces. So I definitely suggest that you roll through and make one block first. And then after you've done that, I'm going to probably go through in more of a fashion of doing it as an assembly line. So the first thing we're going to need for each block, we're going to need 2 half square triangles of H and E. And we're just going to take those and go right sides together. And it depends, you can make half square triangles any way you'd like. My seam guide tape is not long enough to use to do this. So I'm going to just draw the lines on the back of my. All right, so we'll do this on the back of the white. Sometimes on those friction pins, if you do it on a darker color, then that when it gets ironed, it actually turns even lighter. And so it may still remain. So right sides together. So we're going to do it on the back of our white fabric. And we're going to do it on both sides. So again, if this is your first block, I recommend that you draw this out and then stop, sew it. And then once your block is finished, come back and kind of assembly line it. But I've already made a couple of these, so I'm going to roll through and just make my other lines. And I'll fast forward for you guys. Okay, so we'll take those over to the machine and sew them all together all at once. But while we're over here, I'd like to talk to you about the other blocks. So again, if you're building this first one, I would just build one to start. But basically, all of your block A's are going to be matched up with whatever fabric you decided was your background. So I'm sort of following the pattern here with the blue. So all of my A's are going to get sewn to an F. Now there's more F's because I use those for another thing as well. So I will like to keep my same patterns together as I'm sewing these, but I didn't want to have to draw on the back of every single one of these squares. These are smaller squares. They're going to fit against my seam guide, and I'm going to use my seam guide. If you're a beginner, you probably still want to draw the lines for accuracy, but I'm going to not do that on these smaller blocks because they will fit on my table better. I'm just going to take this whole stack and sew it together with F. Then our B stack is going to be sewn together with the same blues. C is going to get sewn together with our white backdrop. And D's are going to get sewn together with our white backdrop. So if you wanted to, we could do the A's and the B's. That's all going to go together. And then my I's, C's, and D's. So I'm just going to roll through and sew all of these together. And I am going to try to keep my colors kind of together. C and B are going to be in the same block, one with a blue square and one with a polka dot square. So as I sew those together, I'm going to make sure they're going through the machine at the same time. And I'll show you that when we get there, just so I don't have to spend a ton of time sorting it out once we get back over here. Okay, so I've got all of my bigger squares ready to go. We're just going to sew down that line. I've got my stitch length at about a 2 because I'm going to be pressing open. I did throw a couple pins in it just because these are larger blocks and I didn't want them slipping around. Okay, so that one's done. Pull the pins out of it. We'll go over to the pressing station with it. I'm going to go ahead and just speed up and sew out the rest of these. Okay, so now we're going to cut our triangles apart. Oops, I sewed this one the wrong side, guys. That's not right sides together. That's wrong side. Get to redo that one. Okay, so now we're just going to press these to one side. Then I'll clip off the dog ears and then we'll press them open. Two matching pieces of A, and I'm going to sew those with our blue background. If you're using a different color background, sorry if that's confusing, but just for simplistic purposes here. And I'm going to keep these together as I run them through the pressing because I'm going to need all 4 of these on the same block. So I'm going to line up. You could draw the lines and sew it just like we did our larger squares, or I can line up with my 1/4-inch line, both front and bottom. And I actually just pulled this out. This is a Lori Holt's Seam So Easy guide. I bought this forever ago for my daughter and she hasn't used it. And I just wanted to see what it was like. It's a lot like the tape. It just gives you a couple more reference points if you need to be perpendicular. So I'm going to run both of those through on one side and then turn them around and do the other side. And you can either pull them right back through and then line up with this 1/4-inch seam, or you could spin them around and stay on the same side. For consistency's sake, I think that's what I'm going to do. Okay, so if you're making your first block, that's all you're going to need of A. So I would keep that really simple. I'm going to run through and sew the rest of my stack just to get it finished. So now we're going to move on to piece B's. So piece B's, we have 2 different stacks. We're going to put one with our white background and one with our blue background, and we're going to use all of these in that same block. I want to keep these together as I run them through. That way I don't have to sort through them later. So then you would sew all of your C's to one color. Now we have our D's, which is our last piece that we're going to need to sew for each block. So we're going to have our 2 matching colored prints and 2 polka dot background prints. Well, 2 white background prints if you didn't choose to do Lori's denim like I did. So that's what we're going to need for our block. And I'm going to sew up the rest of D. And there's one more piece that we have to make. We're going to need 1 for each block of our 2 background fabrics. So as we sew this together, it's going to make 2. So total, we need to make 6. Okay, so now that we've got all of our half square triangles sewn together, we're just going to cut them into their separate pieces. So our seams have already been sewn. We're just going to go right between them. I'm going to keep these 4 together just to keep my sanity when I start putting my block together. And I'm just going to go ahead and cut all of our different half square triangles. So all of these are going to be the same size. When we're done, they should be 3.5. Okay, now I'm just going to press all of these one direction, and then we'll trim off the dog ears and press them open. There are going to be a lot of seams in this block, so if you are worried about having bulky seams for any reason, it really is a good idea to press open. I know it's a lot of extra work. On the next step, I'm going to be nesting seams on my rows. So this first step, I decided to definitely follow the pattern and press all of these open. I'm not really paying too much attention to what direction I'm pressing because really I'm just doing this first press. Then I'm going to trim up all these dog ears and then I'll press it the rest of the way. And then I'm just going to press these all open. Okay, so now we're just going to double check and trim up our blocks. I find that if you sew with that scant quarter, then you're going to need to do just the tiniest little haircut all the way around. Okay, so now we've got all of our blocks, and when you go and look at your pattern, this is where it's really going to be important that you orient everything the right way. If you notice on the front of the pattern, they definitely had a little oopsie in there, and it looks like maybe it didn't get caught, and that's why it ended up as the front cover photo of this pattern. And it would be really, really easy to do. So first we're going to take our biggest 2 half square triangles. We're going to put it with the blue on the top and the white on the bottom. So our blue is all going to be on the top, and our white is going to be down here on the bottom. All right, I think you guys can see the whole block now. All right, so we've got our 2 half square triangles, the biggest ones. Now we're going to use our combination of our print plus our blues. So I have these 4 are my prints plus my blues. These 4 are going to be my middles that alternate. And then these 4 are going to be the white side of my reflections. We're going to need 1 of the half square triangles that combines both of our background fabrics. And that's going to go here in the middle. Then we're going to need 2 of our piece G's and 2 of our piece J's. And that's all we're going to need for this block. Okay. So I like to just kind of lay this out to start. I'm going to go with my piece G's and J's are going to get these 2 diagonal corners. Okay. And then I want to build up this top part. So it's going to go with the blue part down. And I kind of like to think of these as just a flying geese. So obviously that's not right because it's not making my goose. I want to make a goose. So there's my goose. Then it's going to be these 2. And then I'm kind of thinking about this as being an hourglass shape in the corner so I don't make any mistakes. Then this next piece is going to be kind of part of this inner circle, and it's going to go with the pattern towards the middle. Then on our next row, we're going to not do it that way. There we go. So on our next row, we're going to make that flying goose shape again. And here's what I think they maybe made the mistake on in the pattern. I think it was this row. So do pay special attention. We're going to piece this section, then we're going to piece the middle, and then we're going to piece the bottom section. But I just kind of wanted to point this out as I was laying it out. So this is all my background fabrics. And when I lay these out the right way, they're all 3 blues are in a row at the top. Okay. Then next, I'm making that hourglass shape again, and now I'm going to have 3 whites in a row that are on the bottom. So as long as I have 3 on the bottom and 3 on the top, that makes color placement a little bit easier. So I'm kind of making this hourglass shape here. I've got my flying goose, hourglass, flying goose shape, just a little bit. So then that's going to make that same kind of hourglass shape. And then my next piece is going to be my white. So here I've got my flying goose. Then I've got my hourglass right there. And then I'm going to make another flying goose. So when I look down at my blocks, this is how I should see it. I should see kind of this outer rim, and then all the blues on this side, and this outer rim here. And then I've kind of got my two bow ties. So I hope that helps. I know when I started to look at this pattern, I was like, man, that's a lot of half square triangles. I know I'm going to mess something up. And then after I saw the mistake in the pattern, I was really, paying a little bit closer attention. So for right now, just to keep things simple, we're only going to do this top part. So I'm going to bump these guys down. All right, so we are just going to do this section. So the first thing I like to do is get these 6 pieces connected. So I'm going to attach this one to this one as a row all the way across. I am going to chain piece, so I'll show you that over at the machine. Okay, so just to keep things simple here, we're going to be attaching these 2 together and then these 2 together. And then I'll add this last row next. So because these are 2 half square triangles, you are going to want to make sure that those points align. So we'll throw a quick pin in it. I'm kind of surprised at how few points you have to be concerned about on this quilt, honestly. There's so many points that I figured it would be a lot more fiddly. It's really pretty straightforward to do. Now I'm just going to pull this back through, open it up, give it a quick little finger press. This is a solid piece, so it'll be nice and easy. We'll do the same thing on this bottom row. Okay, so I'm going to take this over to the machine, to the pressing station, and I'm just going to press these in opposite directions. So this first one I'm going to press to the left and the second one to the right. You can choose to do it any way you'd like. First row I'm going to press to the left, so I'm going to press it this way, and this row I'm going to press to the right, but I'm working from the back side here, so that's why it seems backwards. And I'm only doing that so that each of my rows will nest, guys. You can certainly press all of these open. I'm just being lazy, fast, both. I don't know. All right, so now we're going to take this over to the machine and our seams will nest nice and easy. What did I do? I pressed to the middle. See what I get for talking, you guys? So many of our blocks, we press like one section to the middle and one section to the outside. Okay, so those are going one way, those the other, and now these seams will nest. There we go. Okay, so now our seams are nested. You can pin those if you need to. And I can feel that that one's nested as well. Okay, I'm going to take this over to the iron and I'm just going to press it open. It's going to set the seam and then we'll press this one open. This one will not need to nest with anything. So since it's feeling like it's kind of getting a little bulky to me, I want to go ahead and flatten that out. You see those little threads from where I chain pieced? I usually try to give myself a little bit more room between chaining and I just forgot that time. Okay, throw that under the clapper for just a second. design boards an awful lot, but it really does help me keep my brain straight. So I'm going to keep putting this back on the design board to make sure I've got it lined up. We're going to attach our big half square triangle to this top corner that we just made. Okay, so we'll go ahead and go over to the machine and press it open. Because this bottom row here is all pressed to that side, I'm going to just press it to that side as well. So it never hurts to double check this row again. I've got my blue on top and my white on bottom, and then I'm going to just sew these in order together. So I'm starting with my far left-hand piece as my bottom, and I'll just keep adding to it. Okay, so we're going to take this over to the ironing board, and I'm going to iron it in an opposite direction from that last row that I was on. So I'll look at that on the ironing board when I'm over there. Okay, so the way this is going to sit together is like this. So I'm going to look back at this row. I press this row that way. So I'm going to press this row this way. That way they will nest, because I like to nest seams. All right, now I am going to let this sit under the clapper for just a minute, and we'll assemble the bottom part of our block while we're waiting. Okay, so now we have the same bottom part of our block in reverse. So I'm going to put these 6 together first, and then we'll attach this big one next. I'm going to chain it out just a little bit further so I don't get stuck with it like I did last time. Okay, so those are my next 2 pieces. Now I can cut it. I can't find my actual washi tape, and I taped this down with some seam tape, and it keeps coming up. I think I'm about to pull it off because it's making me crazy. It's harder for me to get my bobbin in and out, so I don't think it's going to be a tool I use very often. Okay, so we're going to line these points up again. So far we've only had 2 corners that we're really working to align, which I was, again, really surprised at. This block looks like it's got a lot of points you need to be super worried about, and it just came together really nicely. I say that. Okay, so we'll head back over to the pressing station, and I'll look at the direction I pressed last time, and I will press opposite that and do the reverse on the bottom. But I'm taking this off because it's bugging me. Bye-bye, seems so easy. Okay, so I'm going to flip this over just to have a reference point for my next set of blocks. When I attach these guys on, they're going to go over here. So this was pressed to the left, so I want to press this one towards the blue. And I say towards the blue, it's because when I flip it over, right becomes left and left becomes right. Goodness knows I'm easy enough to get confused anyway. All right. And then this last row, we're just going to do the reverse of what we did. Yes, they're nesting very nicely. I've had really good results with the nesting, but if you don't like to nest a seam, please feel free to press it open. Feel like this works well for me, and it kind of saves a step. All right. do like this little guide, but sometimes it does get stuck on an errant thread. Okay, we'll go press this open. We'll give this a quick press. Then we can attach our large half square triangles. Okay, so now we'll go attach our half square triangle to this corner. And we are almost there, guys. All right, so it's going to go on this corner. Okay. Set my seam, fix my seam. And then these are all going to the left. So I'm going to press this to the left. All right. Now we're just going to take this back to the machine and stitch these together. So I will pin these on the important intersections, and then we'll do this one as well. So I'm going to attach my middle row to my bottom section, top section, and my seams should all nest. So I'm going to pin at each of my intersections because I do not want these moving around. I'm relying on that nesting to create the shapes of this block. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and press this because this is a longer block, and then I will add that last piece. Okay, so now I'm going to add my final segment. So this is my top, and this is going to be the bottom part of that block. So we're just going to flip this over and align my seams, find my nesting points, throw a couple pins, and we are done with this block, ladies and gentlemen. Take a peek, make sure we like all our corners. I think we look good. Let's go get it ironed. Okay, so we'll set our seam and we will give it a good iron and get it under our clappers. So there's a lot of pieces in this block. It's a lot of half square triangles, but it's really not that hard and you will be done in no time. All right, so now we have the rest of all of our pieces cut and ready to go. We just have to build the other 11 blocks. Okay, guys, now all of our blocks are put together. Do be especially careful. I think it was block number 8 or maybe number 9. I did have to rip a couple seams because I got one of my squares in there backwards. I don't even remember which one it was. But anyways, do be careful. Now that we've got all our blocks together, all we're going to do, this is going to be a really easy one. We don't have any sashing. We do have a border in the pattern. I'm not sure if I'm going to do the border at all or if I'm going to do a scrappy border or maybe dig through my stash. We'll see when I get there. But for now, we're just going to connect all 4 rows together and then we'll come back and I'll get them back on the design wall for you guys. Okay, so I just picked up my blocks in order. So this is my top left-hand block. Underneath it is my middle block, and then I've got my top right-hand block. So I know I'm going to want to attach these along this edge, and I'm going to just take this and flip it up and put them together. And some of my seams are pressed open, so we may do the poke a pin on these middle connections if I need to. But I'm just going to pin it at the joins, and then we'll sew it together. And I still am using this foot with the little 1/4 inch guide. I'm starting to actually like this foot a lot. I hadn't used it a lot in the past, but I got it. I had one a long time ago when I first started sewing, and I think I tried to use it too much as a crutch, and I ended up like pressing into it too much, or maybe my blocks weren't square, but I really didn't like it. But now that I think I have a little bit more precision in my blocks to begin with, it makes that 1/4 inch really easy as well. So I guess what I'm saying, when I didn't like it when I first started using it, when I first started sewing, it was probably more like I cut it wrong, or I put it together wrong, or I pinned it wrong, or all of the above, you know.
Okay, so now we've got all 4 rows placed together. We're just going to combine these two. Then I'll combine these two just to keep the size reasonable. And then finally, I'll get this middle row and we'll have our quilt top put together and we can talk about borders. All right, so now we have our top section, 2 rows connected. Our middle, bottom section is connected. All we have left is the middle to combine. Now, as you're combining these rows, these points where the blue and the white all come together might be a little finicky, so you might want to try poke a pin method to get that to all connect. I'll try to demonstrate that for you guys here. If it's just if your seam is not quite a 1/4 inch, but you really want, especially because of the contrast between the blue and the white, you really want these to come together nicely. So we'll take this section and we'll knock it off the wall. We'll sandwich those together and sew this last seam before we add our borders. Okay, so here's an example of that poke a pin method. So I have used this pin to mark exactly where my points are coming together. I've pinned on either side of it, and I will either leave my pins in like this, or I will, when I'm pinning, use a friction erasable marker and like put a dot right on that pin, just in case where this is from the edge is not a 1/4 inch. So I know I want to hit right there. So I also know that underneath that I have the other point lined up because that's where the pin was. And it just gives me a visual of where to hit, just in case that 1/4 inch seam wasn't quite right. When we take it back and open it up and look at it, we know that those points are going to come together really nicely. All right, let's press it and get it up on the design wall. Okay, guys, so that's a wrap on our Reflections quilt. I still need to put on borders and then get it quilted, but we've got the entire main body of the quilt top done. I still haven't decided what exactly I want to do on borders. I may mock up a couple photos and see, maybe I'll give it to you guys to vote on and help me decide. But I think it's a pretty good size quilt even without a border, and you still have the 1/4 inch all the way around. So if you did a 1/4 inch binding that wrapped around to the front, you wouldn't cut off any of your points. So I may even just do that. If you like watching any of these tutorials or any of my unboxing videos, please hit that like and subscribe button. It helps out a ton. And until then, I will see you guys next time.